Hello and welcome back to Clean Code and Programming Principles, the Ultimate Guide. My name is Spiros from Programming Tech, and in this video we're going to cover the first and most important principle in programming, which is be pragmatic. So, be pragmatic is actually a principle that's relevant in everything in life, not just programming, and it's really important in everything you do. And what it means is to maximize your true goal in what you're trying to achieve. So actually in programming, it serves as a cautionary principle, and it reminds you that your goal is to write good code and clean code. Okay? Your goal is not to follow programming principles to the extreme if they're going to make your code worse. And if you follow programming principles to the extreme, they can have that effect. Okay, so just remember that. Your goal is to write good code, not to follow programming principles directly. Just programming principles help you most of the time. Just for example, here are two example cases where if you apply programming principles too far, they might actually make your code worse. So one example is playing code golf with your code. So I'm sure you already know that in general, having short code is a good thing for programming because, well, we'll examine more reasons why later. But short code is good. It comes with a lot of benefits. So something like having a function that's 100 lines long is not very helpful. It means that function is very difficult to read and all that stuff. So having a function that's 10 lines long instead tends to be better, even if you have multiple of those functions. And that's for a lot of reasons. However, I'm sure you can imagine that playing code golf, which means to literally make your code as short as physically possible, and you do this with using tricks like minification, syntactical tricks, mathematical tricks, whatever it takes to make your code as short as possible. So I'm sure you can imagine that taking a 100-line function and making it 1 line long would not be good at all, right? It would be awful, it would be impossible to read and impossible to work with. So the point here is, don't take the programming principle of keeping code short and apply it so far into the extreme that it destroys your code. Okay, the goal is to write clean code. It's not to apply principles blindly. Okay, you only apply principles to the point where they help your code, and you need to use your own judgment and common sense to do that. And just as another example, the next example is using the rule of 3. So we're going to examine this again more later in the principle of abstraction. But the rule of 3 basically says that whenever you have, you know how refactoring works, right? When you have multiple instances of similar code, say like 3 or 10 instances of the same function, you refactor them into a single function. Okay, so you take 10 things that do the same thing and you refactor them into one thing, and that makes changes easier and all that stuff. We'll examine it later. But the rule of 3 recommends that you don't refactor code until you find the third occurrence of it where it does the similar thing. So if you see 2 pieces of code doing a similar thing, don't refactor yet. Wait until the third occurrence. And there are very good reasons for that. However, there might be times when that is not the right thing to do. For example, if you have 2 pieces of code that do similar things and so on, but they are very complex. Okay, so making a change to one of those pieces of code might be very difficult. And not only that, you have to do it twice every single time. Anyway, so the rule of 3 in this case would recommend that you don't refactor. However, using your own judgment, you may think that these pieces of code are fairly complex, and having to make the change twice, not just once, is even more difficult. It's quite bad for the project. So you might decide that the best thing to do in this case is to actually refactor them into a single occurrence, even though you're breaking the rule of 3. And that's completely fine, because remember, the goal here is to do what's best for your project, right? It's to have the healthiest project possible and to just have the best project you can. So you're the professional here, and you have to use your own common sense and your own judgment in what you do with these things. So yeah, so that's basically it. Just remember to always do what's best for your project and don't follow principles to such an extreme that they make your code worse, all right? Anyway, that's it. That's a pretty simple principle, and that's basically it for this video. So if you like this video, then please click the like button. And if you'd like to be notified of the next videos that come out in this series, then please subscribe. It really helps the channel when you do those things. And if you have any comments or even counter arguments, then please leave a comment below. All right, thanks, and I'll see you on the next one.